I have gotten phone calls, I've gotten emails from viewers that said, I have not done a tech tip in maybe 10 years. And that might be true. You know, 4 and 6 Psycho, that's where I used to do most of tech tips, is no longer there. The memories will live on forever and ever. The great guys at 4 and 6, Jim Rashid, Ed Hilton, that started 4 and 6, kept it going, made it the premier race shop in the entire country. I could not have done all that road racing without. But anyhow, we're in a dirt track show, so I'm going to do a dirt track tech tip. But this same tech tip applies to everybody. Now, one of the things that I have shown over the years is how to replace brake pads. So whether it's a dirt track bike like my Triumph here, or your street bike, you, the average guy, can replace your brake pads on your motorcycle. It's not tough. It's really quite simple. So anyhow, let's first, this setup here, let's mention a little bit about dirt tracking. When I first got into racing in 1970, you couldn't even run brakes on your dirt bike. Then in 1970, 71, 72, they started allowing brakes. In short track racing, and a half mile, it didn't make that much difference. On a short track, the 4 strokes had an advantage over the 2 strokes. The 4 strokes, just the engine power letting off the gas, would drag down the RPMs and slow the bike down. A 2 stroke, when you let off the gas, sort of becomes freewheeling. So then they first allowed compression releases on the 2 strokes to make them competitive with the 4 strokes, and then they started allowing brakes. So that whole era, 1971, 72, brakes became, you could use them, and then they became mandatory. So I put this setup on my Triumph probably somewhere in the 1970s. It's a Gromika caliper, which is a double action caliper on a disc. So let's first remove the bracket. So basically what you want to do is you want to take a screwdriver, either twist the screwdriver, bend the screwdriver, but what you want to do is force the pads, or the pucks. The pucks are in here that are pushing on the pads. So you want to force the pucks back in all the way, so when you put the new pads on, you're going to have that clearance that you're going to need. As you can see, we got both of the pucks are back in, which gives us a lot of space here for when we put the new pads in. So, on this setup, just use simple cotter pins to hold the pads in place. Some of your motorcycles will use pins, some of the pins unscrew, some will unscrew on one side, some of them have pins that just slide in and out. There's a whole array of different kinds of setups. Needle nose here. And like I said, it's just simple cotter pins, so we gotta bend. Okay, now you can pull the pins out. Okay, now that we got the pins out, we can remove the brake pads. I got some brand new pads here, EBCs. I'll tell you, this is such a vintage setup, goes back so far that with the EBC, the number is FA16. This is one of the first set of pads they ever made. These, this Gromika setup uses the same pads as the Lockheed setup that would be on my 1977 Triumph Silver Jubilee, uses the same pads. Pads in together. Put the pads together, make sure the pads are facing inside, don't put them backwards. Pads go to the inside. You slide into place. Put your fingers underneath. Take the cotter pin. Make sure you catch the one side. Catch the other side. And that's how simple it is to change brake pads. Now when you put it all back together again, if you didn't lose any fluid, you may not even have to bleed your brake system. But I'm going to be changing on the next tech tip I'm going to show. I'm going to change this line here, and then I'm going to show you how to bleed the brakes also. So tune in next week. This is all dirt track racing, a nice dirt track info, but it also applies to people who have street bikes. You do not have to go to a dealer to get brake pads changed. Something you can do. As I stated before, people have called. I have not done any tech tips in a long, long time on Team Chicago Challenge. So as long as we're on these dirt track shows, this is my tech tip number 2. And again, we're talking about back brakes. All this will apply if you want to change your brake lines on your motorcycle. If you don't like them stock brake lines, you want to put stainless steel coated good brake lines on your bike. This is one of the things that you can easily do yourself. First of all, let me explain exactly what the setup is here. This brake line, if you look at it on this bike, looks way too long. Now the reason, we're going back all the way in the 1970s. With steel braided brake lines were not that readily available. Now you can buy them anywhere. And I had this one custom made. Dirt track racing, oval track racing, when you're only turning left, we all put the brake on the right side. Now this Triumph also shifts on the right side. So you put the brake a little bit lower, the shift lever's up here. Yes, you can make it all work. This is all part of dirt tracking. If I was going to run TT races at another racetrack besides Peoria, but the only racetracks I've run TT in the last 20 some years is Peoria. So you can still leave this setup because you only got a slight little right-hander after the jump at Peoria. If I was going to run a TT track like they used to run at Santa Fe Speedway with severe left and right-hand turns, I would have moved the brake over to the other side, and I do have a setup to put the brake on the other side. That's why I had this long brake line made, so that I would move the master cylinder and the brake and put it over on the other side with a different pedal. But as this is the setup I've got right now, I'm going to change this brake line, and I'm going to go to a shorter brake line that I've had from my road race bike, and this should work. And what we're also changing, this one here has got adapters and to go onto the brake line. This is an adapter setup. We're going to go to a banjo setup. A banjo setup, think of a banjo like you play a banjo. This is considered a banjo. And you just use a bolt through here. Okay, so we got an adapter here and the brake line. Now you have fluid catching this pan. We're going to go down to the bottom down here. Okay, now we had everything loose. Remove the brake line. Put the brake line in the pan. As I look at the setup here, see this Gramica caliper. The Gramica caliper is bolted together and has one inlet for the fluid, and on the other side you have your bleeder. Well, because we're going to use banjo bolts, I'm going to switch it. I'm going to put the bleeder on the outside so it's easier. I'm going to put the brake line to the inside. We're going to put the brake line to the inside as long as everything lines up and squares up right. First off, to mount it up here on the master cylinder, we're going to use banjos. Now the majority of motorcycles use banjos, Japanese motorcycles. So here's a typical banjo bolt. As you can see, it's got a hole in the one side, and it's got a little hole in the body, and that's for the brake fluid to pass. So we're going to attach the top one first, and then we'll go down to the bottom. washer on both sides. And thread it in. Now to keep the brake line away from the tire, I'm going to make sure that this banjo is facing straight up and down. I'm going to snug it up. To the master cylinder. Pump it a few times. Get some of the bubbles out. The fluid is going down. Put a little more in so there's no chance of air getting in. This is what I've set up. I took an old brake fluid container, drilled a hole exactly the right size for the hose. The hose inside here is very long. I've used this also on my truck. So, put this over your bleeder so that any fluid coming out will go in here and you won't make a mess. Alright, so we're going to pump. Going down. And I'm going to open it up just to get things going. Nothing came out. Go all the way down. Slowly let up. Add some more fluid. Pump it a few times. See, air bubbles are coming out.
And now it's a matter of continuing the process. Pump the pedal, hold it, open the valve, let the fluid out and the air out, slowly let the pedal back up, pump it, hold it, open up the valve, close it, let the pedal back up slowly, pump the pedal, hold it, open up the valve. Don't forget, TeamChicago.tv, walkwithdan.com. I hope you learned something watching these 2 tech tips on replacing brake pads and bleeding the system and changing the brake line.